The Grand Hall of Station Meridian was the most beautiful place in the known galaxy. Its walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of the room. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds actually formed near the top. 12 species had built this place together, and they were very proud of it. Today, the hall was filled with the greatest warriors from each of those 12 species. They called this gathering the Valor Accords. It happened once every 10 years. Each civilization sent their finest champion to be honored. It was a time of peace, respect, and showing off. Marcus Cole stood at the entrance and looked at the massive doors in front of him. He was 34 years old, a lieutenant commander in Earth's military, and he really did not want to be here. "You're going to be fine," said Lisa Vance. She stood next to him in her formal uniform. Her silver hair was pulled back tight, and her eyes were kind but serious. She had been his commanding officer once. Now she was his friend, and she had volunteered to come with him as Earth's diplomatic helper. "I'm going to be a joke," Marcus said quietly. He looked down at his armor. His combat armor was not pretty. Deep cuts ran across the chest plate. Burn marks covered the left side. The right arm piece had a crack that went from shoulder to wrist. The whole thing looked like it had been through a war and lost, because it had been through a war. Marcus just hadn't lost. "The armor stays," Lisa said firmly. "We talked about this. Earth's military council wanted me to wear the new ceremonial set, the shiny one, and you said no." Marcus touched the cracked chest plate. "This armor earned its place here. Not me." Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but the doors began to open. Golden light spilled out. Music filled the air. It was time. Ambassador David Park rushed over to them. He was a small man with nervous eyes and a habit of fixing his tie even when it was already perfect. "Lieutenant Commander Cole, please remember that this is a diplomatic event. The other species are watching. Earth's reputation depends on what?" Marcus asked. "On me looking pretty?" Ambassador Park's face went red. "On you not embarrassing humanity." Marcus said nothing. He simply walked through the golden doors. The Grand Hall was even more impressive inside. Thousands of beings filled the viewing galleries. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some had wings. Some floated in water bubbles. Some were made of pure energy. All of them turned to watch the champions enter. Marcus saw the other champions immediately. They stood in a line near the center of the hall, each one more impressive than the last. The Valoran champion was the tallest. His body was made of living crystal that glowed with inner light. His armor was not really armor at all. It was an extension of his crystalline form, perfect and beautiful and completely without flaw. They called him Prism Lord Kale, and he looked like a god made of diamonds. Next to him stood the Montari champion, General Vex. The Montari looked like giant insects. They had 4 arms, compound eyes, and sharp mandibles that clicked when they talked. General Vex wore armor that was blood red and covered in medals. Each medal represented a battle won, an enemy destroyed. The Deep Burn champion floated in a sphere of water. Her people lived in the deep oceans of their world. She had blue-green skin, gills on her neck, and armor made from the shells of ancient sea creatures. Her name was something that sounded like waves crashing, but most species just called her the Tide Walker. There were 9 other champions. Each one was perfect. Each one wore armor that gleamed like it had never seen battle. Each one looked at Marcus as he approached, and each one started to laugh. It began with a small sound from the Valoran champion. His crystal body vibrated with amusement. "Is this a joke?" Prism Lord Kale asked. His voice rang like bells. "Did the humans send us their garbage collector by mistake?" More laughter. The Montari general's mandibles clicked rapidly. The sound was their version of a chuckle. Perhaps his armor is a statement, General Vex said. A statement that humans have no pride. Marcus kept walking. His damaged armor creaked with each step. He could feel thousands of eyes on him. He could hear the whispers from the galleries above. Look at the human. His armor is falling apart. How embarrassing for their species. They should have stayed on their little planet. Ambassador Park was sweating. Lisa's hands had formed into fists at her sides. But Marcus showed no emotion. His face was as blank as stone as he took his place at the end of the champion line. The tide. Walker made a gurgling sound that translated as amusement. Do humans not have repair technology? She asked. Even the most primitive species can fix broken equipment. Maybe he cannot afford new armor, said another champion. I hear humans are a poor species. Poor and weak, agreed Prism Lord Kale. Look at him. So small, so soft. One good hit would shatter him like glass. Marcus remained silent. He stood at attention, eyes forward, as if the mockery was just wind passing by him. Lisa wanted to scream at them. She wanted to tell them what that armor had survived. She wanted to show them the classified files, the battle footage, the body counts. But she held her tongue. This was not her moment. The elder speaker finally entered the hall. It was an ancient being, older than any of the species present. No one knew exactly what the elder speaker was. It looked different to each person who saw it. To Marcus, it appeared as an old man with kind eyes and a long white beard. Welcome, champions, the elder speaker said. Its voice filled every corner of the hall without being loud. You have been chosen by your people to represent the best of your civilizations. Today, we honor your courage, your strength, and your sacrifice. The mockery stopped, but Marcus could still feel the amused looks. He could still hear the quiet snickers. Before the formal ceremony begins, the elder speaker continued, it is tradition for each champion to share the story of their greatest battle. This allows us to understand the measure of each warrior. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had not prepared a story. He had not planned to speak at all. One by one, the champions would tell their tales. And then it would be his turn. The Valoran champion stepped forward first. His crystal body blazed with pride. I will begin, Prism Lord Kale announced. My greatest battle was the War of Seven Suns, where I led 10,000 Valoran warriors against the rebel factions. We fought for 30 days without rest. At the end, I stood victorious, without a single scratch upon my form. The crowd cheered. The other champions nodded with respect, but Lisa noticed something. When Prism Lord Kale said, without a single scratch, his crystal eyes had flickered toward Marcus. Toward the deep gouges in the human's armor. The message was clear. Real warriors did not get hurt. Real warriors did not wear their damage like some kind of badge. Lisa looked at Marcus. He still had not moved. His face was still blank. But she knew him well enough to see the tiny muscle jumping in his jaw. He was not angry. She realized he was waiting. The elder speaker gestured for the next champion to speak. The stories of glory were about to begin. And somewhere at the end of that line, a quiet human in broken armor had a story of his own. A story that would change everything. The holographic projectors came to life. Light filled the center of the grand hall, creating images so real that viewers could almost smell the battlefields. Each champion stepped forward to share their greatest victory, and each story was more impressive than the last. General Vex of the Montari went after the Valoran. His forearms moved as he spoke, painting pictures in the air. The Battle of the Ion Nebula, he announced. 30 enemy warships against my single dreadnought. The hologram showed massive ships in space. Fire and explosions lit up the darkness. General Vex's command ship cut through enemy formations like a blade through water. I did not even need to leave my bridge, the insectoid general continued. My tactical mind was the only weapon required. In 6 hours, every enemy ship was destroyed. I lost not a single member of my crew. The crowd roared with approval. Champion after champion told similar stories. Victory without loss. Triumph without pain. Perfection in every detail. The Deep-Burn champion, the Tide Walker, spoke of defending her homeworld's underwater cities against massive predators from the deep. Her hologram showed creatures as big as mountains, with teeth longer than human starships. But her people had superior weapons, superior technology. The predators died quickly, and the Deep-Burn did not even break a sweat. The key to warfare, the Tidewalker said, is to never let the enemy touch you. A warrior who gets hit is a warrior who has already failed. Several champions made sounds of agreement. A few of them looked at Marcus and his battered armor. The message was not subtle. Lisa. Vance stood in the diplomatic section with Ambassador Park. She watched the stories with growing anger. These champions were proud of never being touched. Proud of overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and technology. Proud of staying safe while others did the dying. None of them knew what it meant to fight when everything had gone wrong. None of them had ever truly been tested. This is a disaster, Ambassador Park whispered. When it's Cole's turn, what's he going to say? That his greatest battle was surviving? They'll laugh humanity out of the coalition. Lisa did not answer. She was watching Marcus. He stood perfectly still at the end of the champion line. His damaged armor reflected the holographic lights in strange patterns. The cracks and burns created shadows that moved across his chest like living things. The 9th champion finished his story. Then the 10th. The 11th dot, and then there was only Marcus. The elder speaker turned toward the human. Every eye in the hall followed. The silence was heavy and thick, like the moment before a storm. Human champion, the elder speaker said. Please share with us the story of your greatest battle. Marcus did not move immediately. His eyes were distant, as if he was looking at something very far away. Something only he could see. My greatest battle, he said slowly. His voice was quiet, but somehow it carried to every corner of the hall. I'm not sure I can tell that story properly. Prism Lord Kale made a sound of disgust. Of course, he cannot. What great battles has humanity even fought? You have been part of the coalition for only 50 years. Your species is still learning to walk among the stars. Perhaps he has no great battle, General Vex added. Perhaps that is why his armor looks like scrap metal. It is the only thing he has to show. Laughter rippled through the hall. The champions smiled and nodded at each other, but Marcus simply looked at the Valoran champion. His expression was calm, empty, like the surface of a deep lake with dangerous things swimming beneath. I have a story, Marcus said, but to tell it properly, I would need to remove my armor. The laughter stopped. Confusion replaced mockery on the champions' faces. The crowd in the galleries began to whisper. Remove armor? At a ceremony of honor? It was unheard of. Remove your armor? The Tidewalker asked. Her voice bubbled with surprise. Why would you need to do such a thing? Because my armor tells only half the story, Marcus replied. The other half is written underneath. The elder speaker leaned forward. Something flickered in its ancient eyes. Interest, perhaps. Or recognition. This is highly unusual, the elder speaker said. In 5,000 years of Valor Accords, no champion has ever removed their armor during the ceremony. Then I apologize for breaking tradition, Marcus said. But my story cannot be told any other way. Ambassador Park was gripping his tie so hard it was starting to tear. What is he doing? He whispered frantically. This is madness. He'll embarrass all of humanity. Lisa said nothing, but she was smiling, The elder speaker considered for a long moment. The entire hall waited in tense silence. Then the ancient being nodded slowly. "Permission granted," it said. "Remove your armor, human champion. Show us your story." Prism Lord Kale stepped forward. "This is absurd. He only wants attention. His armor is garbage, and his story is probably nothing more than a bar fight on some backwater colony." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Marcus said quietly, "and nothing to fear from watching." The Valaran champion's crystal form flickered with anger, but he said nothing more. He stepped back and crossed his arms, waiting for the human to humiliate himself. Marcus reached up with both hands and began to unlatch his chest plate. The clasps were old. Some of them were damaged. One had been field repaired with wire because the original mechanism had been melted by acid. Marcus worked each one carefully, his movements slow and deliberate. The crowd watched in silence. Lisa Vance felt her heart beating faster. She knew what was under that armor. She had seen it once in a hospital on Earth, when Marcus had finally been stable enough for visitors. She had stood at his bedside and tried not to cry. She had failed. The first latch came undone. Then the second. Then the third. General Vex leaned closer, his compound eyes reflecting the scene with disturbing intensity. The Tide Walker's water sphere rippled with anticipation. Even Prism Lord Kale, despite his anger, could not look away. Marcus pulled the chest plate free. He held it in his hands for a moment, looking at the damage. Looking at the deep gouges and the burn marks and the 3 round holes where something had punched straight through the metal dot. Then he set it down on the floor and began removing the rest. The arm pieces came next. Then the shoulder guards. Then the leg armor. Each piece was damaged in its own way. Each piece had a story written in scars. Finally, Marcus stood in only his undersuit. It was tight against his body, showing every line and curve of the human form. Beneath, showing everything. The first gasp came from somewhere in the galleries. Then another. Then, a sound that was almost a moan of shock swept through the entire grand hall. Marcus Cole's body was a ruin. Thick scars covered his torso like roads on a map. Burn marks spread across his left side, the skin still rough and discolored even after years of healing. His left arm had visible metal reinforcements where bone had shattered and been rebuilt. His right shoulder bore the distinctive pattern of acid burns. The flesh melted and reformed into shapes that should not exist on a living being. But the worst was his chest. 3 circular scars formed a perfect triangle directly over his heart. Each one was deep and ugly, the kind of wound that should have killed instantly, the kind of wound that nobody survived. And yet, here he stood. Marcus removed his helmet last. His face bore a long scar from his left temple to his jaw. One of his eyes was slightly different from the other, a subtle sign of prosthetic replacement. He set the helmet down with the rest of his armor. Then he looked up at the silent hall. "This," Marcus said quietly, "is my story." The elder speaker raised a hand. Behind Marcus, the holographic projectors flickered to life. But this time, the images were not provided by the champion. They were provided by the Coalition's archives. Classified files, battle footage, records that very few beings had ever seen. Lisa Vance had provided the authorization. She had done it without telling Marcus, knowing he would never ask for himself. The hologram showed a planet, green forests, blue oceans, a human colony called Kepler's Ridge, and then it showed the attack. 3 years ago, the elder speaker's voice rang out. This human stood alone against an army. Now, you will see what that armor truly survived. The hall fell completely silent, and the story of Marcus Cole's greatest battle began to play. And it showed a rescue team finally reaching the canyon. And it showed a rescue team finally reaching the canyon. Asterisk, the silence in the grand hall was heavier than any Marcus had ever felt. It pressed down on everyone, thick and uncomfortable. No one seemed to know what to say. The champions stood frozen. The crowd in the galleries barely moved. Marcus stood in the center of it all, his scars exposed to the light of 1,000 watching eyes. "Humans," he said finally, "are not like you." His voice was calm, not proud or boastful, just honest. "We do not have crystalline bodies that regenerate," he continued, looking at Prism Lord Kale. "We do not have armor that grows from our skin. We cannot survive in deep oceans without machines, or fly through space without ships, or communicate across planets with our minds." He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of each champion in turn. "We are soft. We are fragile. Agile. A single blow can kill us. A single moment of bad luck can end everything. By every measure that matters, we should be one of the weakest species in the galaxy." General Vex shifted uncomfortably. His compound eyes reflected Marcus's scarred form 100 times over. "Then how?" The Montari general asked. "How did you survive 67 hours against the swarm? How did you kill nearly 3,000 creatures with a broken arm and holes in your chest? It should not be possible." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked down at his hands, at the scars that covered his knuckles, at the fingers that had bent and broken and healed and broken again. "There is something you do not understand about humans," he said. "Something we do not even understand about ourselves, most of the time." He looked up. "We do not stop." The words hung in the air. Simple words. Small words. But something about the way Marcus said them made them feel like more than that. "Other species fight until the odds are against them," Marcus continued. "Then they retreat. They regroup. They find a better position. That is smart. That is logical. That is how war should work." He touched the 3 circular scars over his heart. "Humans are not logical. When everything goes wrong, when the odds become impossible, when any reasonable being would run, something happens inside us. Something switches. And we stop thinking about survival." The Tidewalker's water sphere rippled. "What do you think about instead?" "The people behind us," Marcus said simply. "The ones who cannot fight. The ones who are counting on us. When a human decides that someone else's life matters more than their own, something changes. Fear goes away. Pain becomes just information. And we fight." He paused. "Not to win. We often do not think we can win. We fight to give others a chance. We fight to buy time. We fight because that is what we are." In the diplomatic section, Lisa Vance was crying openly now. Ambassador Park had forgotten all about his tie. He was staring at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. "In that canyon," Marcus said, "I did not believe I would survive. After the first day, I was certain I would die. My body was broken. My weapons were running out. The swarm never stopped coming." He closed his eyes for a moment. "But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered the shelter behind me. I remembered the children I had seen running through the canyon. I remembered the old woman who had thanked me as she passed. I remembered the soldier from my squad who had looked back at me one last time before the door closed." His eyes opened again. They were bright with something. Not tears. Something deeper. They were counting on me. So I kept fighting. Not because I was brave. Not because I was strong. But because I could not let them down. Prism Lord Kale stepped forward. His crystalline body was still dim, but there was something different about his posture now. The pride was gone. In its place was something like wonder. "You said you were not brave," the Valoran champion said slowly. "But what you describe, that is the definition of bravery." Marcus shook his head. "No, Bravery is when you are not afraid, but you fight anyway. What I felt was not bravery. It was something more basic, more human. What was it? Marcus looked at the Valoran champion. Really looked at him, as if seeing past the crystal and light to something inside. Stubbornness, Marcus said. Pure, stupid, human stubbornness. The universe told me to die. I said no. A sound came from somewhere in the galleries. It took a moment to identify. Someone was laughing. Not mocking laughter like before. This was something else. Something surprised and delighted and almost disbelieving. More sounds followed. Murmurs of amazement. Whispers of respect. When you lose everything, Marcus continued, when your body is broken and your weapons are gone and you have nothing left, there is still one thing no enemy can take from you. Your choice. Your decision to keep going or to stop. He pointed to his scarred chest. These wounds should have killed me. By every medical standard, I should have died at hour 48. My heart stopped twice. My brain began to shut down from blood loss. But somehow, I kept moving. The doctors could not explain it. They said it was impossible. He smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad. They were wrong. It was not impossible. It was just human. The Tidewalker moved closer, her water sphere carrying her toward Marcus. Your species, she said. We have studied you for 50 years. We thought we understood you. Small creatures. Short lives. Fragile bodies. Nothing special. She looked at his scars. At the map of pain and survival written across his skin. We were fools, she said. Marcus shrugged. The movement pulled at old wounds, but he did not wince. You judged us by our bodies. Everyone does. It is a natural mistake. But your bodies are weak, General Vex said. He was not mocking now. He sounded genuinely confused. How can you call that a mistake? Because strength is not about bodies, Marcus replied. Strength is about will. And human will is the strongest thing we have. Maybe the strongest thing any species has. He looked around the hall at the thousands of watching faces. We do not have claws or fangs or armor plating. So we invented weapons. We do not have thick skin or natural healing. So we invented medicine. We cannot survive in space. So we built ships. We cannot fly. So we built planes. We cannot run faster than most predators. So we invented strategies to outlast them. His voice grew stronger as he spoke. Every weakness we have found a way around. Every limitation we face, we have refused to accept. That is what humans are. We are the species that looks at impossible and says, not today. Marcus reached down and picked up his helmet from the pile of broken armor at his feet. He looked at it for a long moment. This armor has saved my life more times than I can count. Every crack, every burn mark, every piece of damage represents a moment when I should have died but did not. Some people think I should replace it. Get something new and shiny. He shook his head. But I wear it as a reminder. A reminder that the universe keeps trying to kill me. And I keep refusing. He set the helmet down again. That is what I wanted to show you today. Not my scars. Not my wounds. But what they represent. The thing that makes humans dangerous. The thing that makes us survive when we should not. Marcus looked at each champion in turn. At the crystal warrior and the insectoid general and the aquatic fighter and all the others. Beings from across the galaxy, each one powerful in their own way. We are not the strongest species, Marcus said. We are not the smartest or the most advanced. But we might be the most stubborn. And in the end, that might matter more than all the rest. The elder speaker moved forward. Its form seemed brighter now, more solid somehow, as if something about Marcus's words had brought it more fully into the world. In 5,000 years of valor accords, the ancient being said, I have heard many stories of battle. Stories of great fleets and powerful weapons. Stories of overwhelming force and strategic brilliance. It turned to face the assembled crowd. But I have never, in all those years, heard a story like this. A story of one soldier against an army. A story of a broken body and an unbroken will. A story of what it truly means to be a warrior. The elder speaker looked at Marcus. We asked you to share your greatest battle. You have done more than that. You have shown us something we had forgotten. Something we perhaps never truly knew. What is that? Marcus asked. That the measure of a warrior is not in their victories, the elder speaker said. It is in what they are willing to sacrifice, and in how much they can endure. The ancient being raised a hand. Champions of the coalition. You have heard the human story. Now I ask you, what is your response? The hall fell silent again. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. A waiting silence. An expectant silence. Then Prism Lord Kale, the Valoran who had laughed first and loudest, did something no one expected. He dimmed his crystal body completely. Not just low, like before. Completely dark. It was the Valoran gesture of absolute respect. A gesture that had not been given to an outsider in over 1,000 years. And then he knelt. The sound of his crystalline knees touching the floor echoed through the silent, hauled out one by one. The other champions followed. General Vex folded all 4 of his legs beneath him. The Tidewalker lowered her water sphere until she was at Marcus's feet. Every champion, every proud warrior who had mocked the human just hours before, knelt before him. And then, slowly, the galleries began to follow. Thousands of beings. Species that had warred with each other for ages, all kneeling together, all facing the same direction, all looking at a single human standing in the center of broken armor. Marcus stood frozen. He had not expected this. He had not wanted. The ceremony continued, but everything had changed. The formal ritual still happened. The speeches were still given. The medals and honors were still presented. But none of it felt the same. Everyone in the Grand Hall kept looking at Marcus. At his scars. At his armor, which Lisa and Ambassador Park had helped him put back on. The battered, broken armor that would never be replaced. When the elder speaker announced that humans would be given full permanent status in the Coalition's military alliance, no one objected. When it declared that Marcus Cole would be entered into the Coalition's Hall of Heroes, every champion voiced their agreement. But the real moments came later. After the ceremony ended. After the crowds began to leave. After the formal atmosphere gave way to something more personal. General Vex was the first to approach. The Mentari General moved with a different posture now. The pride was still there, but it was mixed with something else. Humility, perhaps, or respect. Lieutenant Commander Cole, General Vex said. His mandibles clicked softly. I must speak to you. Marcus turned. His face was tired, but calm. General, before today, my species considered humans to be prey animals, General Vex said bluntly. Weak creatures that survived only because the galaxy had not bothered to crush them yet. Marcus said nothing. He just waited. I was wrong, General Vex continued. My entire species was wrong. What I witnessed today, what you showed us, it changes everything. I thought I knew about strength and weakness. The insectoid general stood straighter. I would like to formally request a military exchange program between the Montari Empire and Earth. I want my warriors to train with humans. I want them to learn what you have learned. I want them to understand how to fight when fighting seems impossible. Marcus blinked. You want to train with us? I want to learn from you. General Vex corrected. There is a difference. Before Marcus could respond, the Tidewalker approached. Her water sphere had been replaced by a more portable device, allowing her to move more freely. The Deep Burn wished to offer you honorary citizenship, she said. You would be welcome in our underwater cities at any time. You would have access to our healing pools, which can repair damage that surface medicine cannot touch. She gestured to Marcus's scars. We could not erase what you have suffered, she added softly, but we can help with some of the pain. Marcus touched his chest, the 3 circular scars that marked his near death. The pain reminds me, he said quietly. Some days, I need the reminder. The Tidewalker nodded slowly. I think I understand. The offer remains open. Always. More champions came. More offers were made. The Vallon wanted to teach humans their crystal song meditation, a technique they had never shared with outsiders. The energy beings offered access to their neural networks. Even the smaller species, ones that had never spoken to humans before, approached with words of respect and admiration. Ambassador Park was running from conversation to conversation, barely able to keep up. His nervous energy had transformed into excited energy. Everything he had feared had turned into everything Earth could have hoped for. This is unprecedented, he kept saying to anyone who would listen. Absolutely unprecedented. The diplomatic implications are extraordinary. Lisa Vance stood apart from the crowd, watching Marcus. He looked overwhelmed, not comfortable with the attention, not enjoying the praise. He kept trying to deflect, to point out that others deserved credit, to minimize what he had done. That was Marcus. That had always been Marcus. She made her way through the crowd and took his arm. Come on, she said quietly. Let's get some air. She led him to a balcony at the edge of the Grand Hall. It overlooked the station's main dome, where artificial stars twinkled in an artificial sky. It was beautiful in a manufactured way. How are you doing? Lisa asked. Marcus leaned against the railing. I don't know how to answer that. Try. He was silent for a long moment. His hands gripped the railing. Old scars stretched across his knuckles. I didn't want any of this, he finally said. I didn't come here to be a hero. I came because Earth told me to, and I follow orders. I wore that armor because it felt wrong to wear anything else. And I told my story because they asked. And now everyone is looking at me like I'm something special. Marcus's voice was flat, like I'm some kind of symbol. They don't understand. What don't they understand? Marcus turned to face her. His eyes, one natural and one artificial, were filled with something hard to read. Not pride, not satisfaction, something darker. I was scared, Lisa. Every second of those 67 hours, I was terrified. When my arm broke, I wanted to scream and give up. When those projectiles hit my chest, when I felt my heart stop, all I could think about was how much I wanted it to end. His voice cracked slightly. I didn't keep fighting because I was brave. I kept fighting because I was too scared to stop. I knew that if I fell, if I let them through, those people in the shelter would die. And I was more scared of that than I was of dying. Lisa put her hand on his arm. That's exactly what bravery is, Marcus. No, it's not. Bravery it's supposed to be noble, heroic. I was just a terrified man who didn't know how to quit. Lisa smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. You think heroes aren't scared? She asked. You think courage means not feeling fear? That's not how it works. Courage is being afraid, being so afraid you can barely think, and doing the right thing anyway. She squeezed his arm. You stood alone against an army. You fought for 67 hours with a broken body and no hope of survival. And you did it not for glory or praise, but because there were people counting on you. That's not just courage, Marcus. That's the best of what humans can be. Marcus looked away, back at the artificial stars. back at the station that represented everything humanity had achieved in the galaxy. They're going to write about this, he said quietly. They're going to tell stories. Make me into something I'm not. Let them, Lisa said. Let them tell stories about the human who wouldn't quit. Let them remember what we're capable of when everything goes wrong. Because the next time some species dismisses humanity as weak, the next time someone thinks we're easy prey, they'll remember your name. I just wanted to protect people, Marcus whispered. That's all I ever wanted, and you did. 3,042 of them. Plus everyone in that hall today who learned something new about what strength really means. They stood in silence for a while. The artificial stars twinkled. Somewhere behind them, the celebration continued. Finally, Marcus spoke again. There's going to be a provision. In coalition law, the elder speaker told me before I left the ceremony what kind of provision from now on. Human representatives will be permitted to wear battle-worn equipment at official ceremonies, no matter how damaged it is. They're calling it the Cole Provision. Lisa laughed. It was a surprised laugh, bright and genuine. That's actually perfect. Marcus shook his head, but he was almost smiling. It's excessive. It's fitting. The next morning, Marcus and Lisa boarded a transport back to Earth. The journey would take several days. Time to decompress. Time to process everything that had happened. They sat together in a small observation lounge as the station grew smaller behind them. Other ships passed in the distance, each one carrying beings that had witnessed the Valor Accords. Beings that would carry the story home with them. Can I ask you something? Lisa said, always. When you were in that canyon, when things were at their worst, what kept you going? What thought pulled you through? Marcus was quiet for a long time. The stars slid past the window, infinite and ancient and indifferent. There was a little girl, he finally said, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She was one of the last to make it to the shelter. Her mother was carrying her, but the woman was hurt. Couldn't run fast. I told my squad to take them, to get them inside no matter what. His voice grew soft. As they passed me, the little girl looked back, and she said, "Thank you for being brave." Just like that. Simple, honest, a child's voice. Saying something she probably didn't fully understand. He touched the gouges in his chest plate. Every time I wanted to give up, I heard her voice. Every time my body told me to stop, I saw her face. I couldn't let her down. I couldn't make her wrong. He looked at Lisa. That's the most human thing, I think. Not strength. Not stubbornness. Just not wanting to let down the people who believe in us. Not wanting to prove their faith wrong. Lisa wiped her eyes. That little girl. Do you know what happened to her? She survived. They all survived. Marcus almost smiled. That's all that matters. The transport entered Earth's atmosphere hours later. The blue planet filled the window, beautiful and small and covered with city lights. Millions of humans down there. Billions of them. All soft. All fragile, all carrying that same spark. Lisa placed her hand over Marcus's damaged chest plate, over the 3 circular scars hidden beneath. Rest now, she said. You've earned it. Marcus looked down at Earth, at his home, at the species that the galaxy had dismissed as weak. We don't stop, he said quietly. That's what I told them. But that's not quite right. What is right? Marcus watched the city lights grow closer. Watched the small blue planet that had produced something the galaxy had never seen before. We don't stop for each other, he said. That's the truth. When we love someone, when we're protecting something that matters, we become something else. Something that doesn't quit. Something that doesn't know how to quit.